The female that went to the firehouse is advising them that the male shot the entire family.
Stand up! Stand up!
How does one man find it in himself to pick up a gun and not only shoot one child, but execute 3 of them? This is what happened to the Doerman family in Ohio back in June. 3 young boys lost their lives at the hands of their father in an average neighborhood. In today's video, we're going to take a closer look at this intense true crime case and see what happened that night. We have noticed some disturbing parallels with a case from one of the more infamous recent crime documentaries. With that in mind, we're going to go over the details of the murders, the additional torture victims, and other factors in Chad Doerman's backstory. As a content warning straight away, this criminal case does deal with graphic incidents of child murders. Once you've seen the video and gotten a better idea of the case, we'd love to hear from you about your opinions on this heartbreaking story. The defense may try and claim insanity or some other form of diminished responsibility. But is that likely? Is Doerman going to get away with his because it was a moment of madness? Or is he going to get the death penalty for deliberately murdering and torturing his family? It takes a lot for a judge to say that any act is the most heinous, monstrous crime. But that's exactly what happened in Clermont County, Ohio, in June this year. They were astonished by intense police reports that the man before them, 32-year-old Chad Doerman, carried out a pre-planned execution-style murder of 3 young children. They were not any random children either. They were Doerman's own flesh and blood, who had been peacefully enjoying his company moments before they died. In today's true crime video, we're going to take a closer look at the disturbing case of Chad Doerman in 3 parts, each more shocking than the last. First, we'll go through the harrowing details of the 3 deaths of his young victims and look at the cases for and against his prosecution. As a trigger warning, this one does go into some really grim detail about the infanticide of very young children. Then, we're going to take you even deeper into the reports from the murder scene. This is where things get really strange, as we uncover some of the parallels between this case and another famous infanticide case from Michigan. Keep watching to see how scarily similar the 2 events are. You won't believe how many details are the same, almost as if history was repeating itself. Finally, we'll take a look at the case for the prosecution and defense. Make sure to stick around until the end here because we've also found an incident from Chad Doerman's criminal past that is shocking. It is so significant that could end up being pivotal in the final verdict in this trial. Let's start by looking at exactly what happened on the night of the heartbreaking murders. The murders of the Doerman children. Police arrived on scene at a home on Laurel Lindale Road in Monroe Township at around 4:15 on the 15th of June, 2023. There had been reports of a shooting.
Female that went to the firehouse is advising them that the male shot the entire family. You're quick.
Where's he at?
He's shooter's on the porch.
Get him right here. You got him on the porch.
We've asked, that's the last place we've been told.
You
that
show
he's
me
on
your
the
hands
porch.
now! Stand up and walk towards us! Stand up now!
29 and 63 attack that.
And they arrived to find Chad Doerman sitting outside his home with a rifle beside him. The natural assumption here was that this man was responsible for those shots and some sort of dispute had taken place. What the officers found was a lot more horrific. Doerman's 3 young sons, aged between just 3 and 7 years old, were all dead. The story states that Doerman returned home from work early that afternoon and invited the 3 young boys to take a nap with him in his master bedroom. This all sounds sweet enough, but it was a motive to get the kids in one room to kill them. The bedroom also contained the family gun safe, where he held his Marlin Model HC-22 rifle. Once the boys were cozy on the bed beside him, he got out of bed, retrieved the gun, inserted a magazine, and opened fire on the first of the 3 boys. The other 2 fled the room. One managed to get to a nearby field, but Chad chased him and dragged him back to the home. There he shot him in the head. The third boy almost escaped but also took a bullet in the head outside the property. All three died execution style at close range. The actions of a deranged lunatic or cold-blooded murderer. There is a lot to process with his case when there are such graphic reports about the deaths and torture endured by these young boys. Some are hard to comprehend, such as the fact that Doerman was sitting waiting with the gun by his side, ready to be arrested, with his dead children in the home. However, if you are a regular viewer and subscriber to our channel, you will find this familiar. There is a strange parallel here between the Doerman case and that of Gregory Green. Green also killed his children at his home and waited for the police to arrive on the front porch. If you saw the video, you will know that he shot his teenage stepchildren and also left his young biological children to suffocate via a modified exhaust in the car on the driveway. If you haven't seen that one yet, go back through our true crime stories and check it out. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future content, and to give the videos a like to help us out. In that case, a significant part of the trial hinged on the impact on Green's tortured and surviving wife. Shockingly, it is a similar story here. The survivors of the Doerman shooting. The media reports about this mass murder will focus on those innocent children, and rightly so. However, further details about the event show how things could have been much worse. There were two other family members in that house at the time. One was the boy's mother, and the other was the boy's older sister. Let's start with the sister, whose experience throughout the shooting is hard to comprehend. She had been present in the house but wasn't invited into the room for that nap. Instead, she was watching TV in another room. She reached the bedroom in time to see the first of her brothers shot, and then frantically attempted to get the other two out of the house. She managed to get quite far with one of them in her arms, almost reaching the road outside. Then Chad called for her to put him down, pointing the rifle towards them. When it failed to go off, the boy ran to his mother, and the girl began calling for help. She ran towards the local fire department and told a passerby what was going on. Then there is the mother, whose experience is even more horrific and scarring. She was present in the bedroom during that ill-fated napping session. When Chad Doerman shot the first of the three boys, her immediate instinct was to try and administer some aid to her son and tell the other two to run. She managed to leave the home, attempting to save the third son in the process. He ran to her after his sister let him go, assuming this was the safest option. She picked him up and tried to leave, but Chad tried to wrestle him out of her arms and get hold of him. He even went as far as to bite her in the process, to get her to let go. The mother tried to get the gun away from Chad, to stop him from inflicting any more harm. In doing so, he fired and shot through her thumb. It was this injury that caused her to drop the boy, and Chad then had the opportunity to shoot him in the head. With all three dead, Chad went and sat on the stoop of the home, with no further plans to kill. He sat there and waited while the mother tried desperately to save her children. Reports state that there were 9 shots in total. Why just the boys? When we add in these extra details about the experience of the children's mother and sister, we have another important question. Why did they survive? There were several opportunities throughout the incident for Chad Doerman to shoot and kill them both too. Shooting the mother in the bedroom would have made it harder for the kids to get away, or for anyone to call for help. The same goes for the sister as she helped them flee. Why was she spared? Once again, we can't help but look at the actions in the Gregory Green case and see the same sort of sadistic mindset. There is no doubt here that he tortured both the mother and sister of those poor boys. He made them suffer, forcing them to watch him take those innocent lives. The fact that Chad deliberately brought one boy back to the property to kill him in front of everyone at home is hard to comprehend. This was not a quick and merciful death. There was no attempt to take these lives for some greater good.
Okay, so I want you just to listen right now, okay? We're gonna have the public defender. I know, Chad, look at me, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. No, I know, just take a deep breath for me, okay? I'm gonna have your public defender come back and talk to you, okay? And then we're gonna go out and we're gonna do your hearing. Can you hear me? Do you need a second? Just take a deep breath. Okay, so your public defender will come back and talk to you. You understand that? Okay, and then we'll go out for your hearing, okay? There is news media out there, okay? When you walk out, you'll see a piece of black tape on the floor. All I need from you is to stand on that piece of black tape, face the judge only, and just listen, okay? Your public defender or your attorney is gonna do all the talking for you. They'll say that you have the right to remain silent, and I advise you to use that, okay? Because everything in there is recorded. So I want you, again, just to stand there, look at the judge only, don't turn to the media, don't turn to anybody in the audience that you may know. Listen to the judge and let your public defender do the talking for you, okay?
The Doerman murder trial.
Things even more disturbing, Judge, this was no haphazard act. Again, by his own admission, he planned the events of this day.
As 3 young lives ended early,
I can only imagine that the terror that these little boys felt and experienced as their father, the protector, was murdering them.
What makes this case a little stranger is that despite everything on that body cam footage, and the fact that Doerman initially confessed to the murders, he entered a plea of not guilty. On the day of the murders, he made a statement that he had shot the 3 boys and that he shouldn't have done it. He literally said, "I did it. Take me to jail." Later on, he decided to plead not guilty and said that he hadn't been sleeping well before the incident. Doerman's pretrial hearing began on September 22nd. It highlighted 21 separate charges to his name. There are 9 counts of aggravated murder, 8 of kidnapping, and 4 of felonious assault. He is currently held on a $20 million cash bond. The prosecution seeks the death penalty as an appropriate sentence based on the nature of the crime. The further evidence against Doerman. This is where we come to some of the further evidence against Doerman that could really work against him in this trial. Furthermore, these facts strengthen those spooky parallels with the facts uncovered in the crime documentaries of Gregory Green. You see, in the case of Gregory Green, there were 2 pertinent, damning pieces of evidence. The first was the fact that he premeditated the crimes. He had planned the shootings and the modification of the exhaust pipe weeks before the murders. It appears that there was a similar motivation in the Doerman case. Statements obtained around the time of the arrest show that Doerman had entertained thoughts of killing the children. This suggests there was a premeditated aspect to the crime and a deeper desire to inflict harm. The defense argues it was a spontaneous response, crime of passion, or moment of insanity. On top of these, there are reports from neighbors living close to the family that suggest he was repeatedly cruel to them. There are also reports about Doerman's character from his neighbors that he had a terrible temper and took it out on his family. He often yelled at them all, one saying it was a daily occurrence.
You felt like he was just angry, generally speaking.
He was every day. Heard him. There wasn't a day he didn't yell at his wife and kids out there.
What would he yell?
All the time. He was just angry, yelling at her all the time, treating her like.
So when you look at that house now, what do you see?
I still see the babies sitting in the yard, playing in the yard. One was right there by the tree, right by the road, not even 20 feet from the road right there. This is where that dude lay in. Laid the one up there right beside that silver truck to the left of the tire, about 5 foot. That's all I see every time I come out here. For any man to even think about doing that is just, no words can explain it.
The second parallel is the one that could have serious consequences for Doerman's sentence. Prior convictions and acts of violence always work against the defendant. In the Gregory Green case, there was a previous murder conviction after he stabbed his pregnant wife. He was released on parole and started a new life with his second wife, never telling her what he had done. The accusations against Doerman aren't as serious, but they are still shocking. Doerman's prior arrest. There was an incident back in 2010 when Doerman was a young adult. The police charged him with domestic violence on suspicion of choking his father. Now, it is important to note that the court dismissed all charges, but it still raises questions about Chad's mental state and violent tendencies. First of all, how much truth is there to the idea that he attacked his father that night, and to what extent did he harm him? If he was able to do this, in a possible fit of anger or deep resentment back then, how plausible is it that he could then use the same force against his young family? Second, was this incident of domestic violence a one-off? With this accusation and the stories about his temper and verbal abuse, it isn't unreasonable to assume that something more may have taken place behind closed doors. The case supporting Chad Doerman's innocence. For the sake of balance, we have to look at the other side of the case and the defense, although it is hard to find anything to suggest his innocence or to advocate for his acquittal. One factor that works in his favor is his lack of previous convictions. The choking incident didn't go any further, and there were no charges for violent behavior afterward. This suggests that maybe Chad was a changed man after all, and this was a moment where he simply went crazy. Remarkably, after all that happened in 2010, his father is more lenient. He says he doesn't understand what happened, stating that Chad must have just snapped. He also felt that the man who stood before him after the murders was not the son he recognized. He says there was a hollow look behind Chad's eye, as though something was missing. Others might argue that this was a sign of a lack of humanity, and proof that Chad was truly evil. Maybe this was him being his true self, rather than someone in a moment of madness. Chad Doerman awaits trial. As of now, Doerman still awaits trial to see if he will indeed be found not guilty, as hoped for, or if the court will deem him fully responsible for the children's deaths. The evidence against him appears to be undeniable. It will be hard to plead any case of insanity or diminished responsibility when there are confessions to a premeditated plan, further witness statements about his character, and that prior incident of choking a family member won't help the case either. We have a long wait to see what will happen with this disturbing trial, as it is not set to go ahead until July 2024. The defense team has until then to perfect their case somehow. Until then, we'd love to read your thoughts on what happened to those victims, especially with those parallels with the Gregory Green case. Do you think that Doerman's father is right, and that he snapped in a one-off intense moment of madness? Or was this a calculated and cold-blooded act to not only murder those children, but torture his wife and daughter? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below.